Alright, let's go check if it's streaming. I'll wait a few seconds and go there. Do I have my choice there? It looks like I do. Okay. So as I wrote in the description, I want to show you in this stream how I could make like an easy, quick mission with a little bit of atmosphere and a few triggers and things like that. It's going to be an F1 mission. We'll see how everything goes. Sometimes I have difficulties doing things in the editor with the Mirage F1 and my F15 that are some of my newer planes. So hopefully I won't get too much of that, but it's really just to show some of the things we can do with the editor. Now when you are getting into the editor, you need to choose which map you're going to do your mission on, and then you get this screen where you choose your map, and then you can make your coalitions. Now let's say, for example, if I wanted Austria, I don't know, to be on the blue side, I could click the blue arrow there and you see Austria has appeared here. For now it's not really going to be that complicated because I'm just probably going to make a mission with combined task force blue and combined task force red, just because this mission could take place anywhere. But really sometimes it's something you might want to think about is, first of all, once you choose your map, who's going to be on the good side and the bad side? Are you going to play for blue side or are you going to play for red side? And then what kind of enemy do you want on the other? When you use those blue and red that I'm going to use for this tutorial, basically you can put any unit in the game, so it makes it a bit simpler. I chose the Caucasus map because pretty much everybody has it if you have DCS, so if somebody wants to reproduce this, they'll be probably able to do it if they have the Caucasus map and the Mirage. So this is my starting point there, and so we'll click OK. I've already sort of decided where I want to go. I'll show you some of the things I do when I want to choose a location for a mission, to see if I like the terrain, to see if I like where the target could be and things like that. For this one, I felt like making a mission where I would be dropping Durandals with Mirage F1. And so we are going to be attacking an airfield, but I will probably still show you one of the first things I do when I make a mission, which would be to choose the target spot where I'm going to go. In this case here, we're going to be taking off from Jelenzik here and going to Krimsk as our target. So I could already click on that and set it to red to make it an enemy airfield, and click on this one and say it's going to be blue. And you can see, like, since I'm on the altitude map, you can see that there's like a mountain chain here, and that's going to be useful for my mission because I wanted to take off from here at low altitude, head around here over the city, and then go north towards the target and try to line up with that runway that we're going to bomb. Now let's say I want to check out this area to see what it looks like, to see how the 3D terrain around this looks like. One of the things I like to do is to start with a ground unit, and I'll put it, let's say here in the middle of the runway somewhere, and I'm going to put it on the combined red force whatever here, and I'm going to make it a UAZ. Okay, so the UAZ is in the LUV vehicles that you have there. It's the little Jeep that the Russians have. In this case, it would make sense that there would be like one of those Jeeps at Krimsk because it's a Russian airfield. So to have like a Russian Jeep that looks like this makes a bit of sense, right? But the reason why I put it in the mission and I do it first is I call it OBS1. It's my observer one. And then I just copy that in here or whatever, somehow like that. And that object now is going to be the one that I will use when I want to look around this area. And one of the things I sometimes do with this is I will go to the option or the commands, I think. Yeah, command, and I'll set it to invisible. And then I will set it to immortal. What that does is that even if one of your friends spots that Jeep at one point when they're flying the mission and they bomb it, it won't die. Why do I want to have that? Well, it's because I like to use the F7 view once in a while as my tool for bomb damage assessment. Like when you're bombing a runway like we're going to do, you don't see a building catch fire necessarily because you're bombing a piece of concrete. So having a vehicle nearby like this, you're going to be able to get to the F7 view and by zooming around, check out the runway. So we'll illustrate that, but before we do, we have to find a name for our mission. Okay, that's one of the things that sometimes I find difficult to do as you're starting a mission. So one of the tricks I've found is to save the mission as, and you see here there's a test Sinai, there's a test Caucasus 2, there's probably like a test Caucasus somewhere. There you go. So since that's an old test I probably did, I'm going to use that one right now as my test. Yes, I want to overwrite. And so right now I've saved the mission, and the only thing that's in it is that Jeep. But if I click here and I load the mission with only that in the mission, I can't fly any plane, I don't have observer spots, I don't have anything else. But once the mission loads, we'll see that Jeep. You see, it's right here. And you've got the label on it. It's called OBS11, like I put in this thing. And what's nice about this OBS11 is that if I zoom out, I can see the whole airfield. I can see the terrain around it. We can see it's pretty flat, but to the south in that direction, we see the mountains that are close to the coast. It'd be nice if I could zoom out all the way there, but you're sort of limited to like an area of about, let's say, 5 miles around the object you've positioned, but it allows you to look at the map in 3D. And that can be useful afterwards if I want to populate this airfield, like those big parking spots I could put bombers in, and some of the more open ones I could put some fighters ready for takeoff, like in those areas here. Whatever, it allows you to just see what the area looks like in 3D. And so this is a fun thing to have. And once I've bombed my airfield, I'll be able to look at this and see if I've created some craters on the runway by just going to the F7 view, which I wouldn't be able to do if I hadn't put a vehicle there. So that's my first little point there. And let's say you want to attack a group of vehicles in another type of mission. You could put your vehicles in the mission, and if you want them in a valley, you could pinpoint their location right where you want in that valley by using that trick. Is you put an observer vehicle, you put the other vehicles nearby, and you go, are they in the right position? Are they where I want? That helps you to set up the mission. But as you can see here, my target is going to be that single long runway. And that's what we're going to use for our Durandals. So already we have like a mission set up. So now we can exit this. Now, sometimes the labels can be useful when you're flying. For some people, it's quite useful. Sometimes it can be useful when you're building a mission and you might want to leave them. I find them annoying more than anything else. One of the first things I'm going to do here when I get here is I'm going to go to that little check mark. I'm going to choose labels, and I'm going to say no labels. That way I'm not going to have to turn them off every time I get into the mission. And so there. So one of the things I want to do for this mission is to create because we're going to use that terrain and because we're going to be coming in low to bomb the runway, we're going to simulate that we are taking the enemy by surprise. And so probably their AAA and their SAMs and all these systems will be on standby, but not quite ready for war because maybe the war hasn't started yet. Maybe we're doing a first strike type of thing. And the reason why I thought about that when showing you this tutorial is I want to show you how to set up things that can be like delayed. And so what I'll do is I'll put a few AAA emplacements. Okay, so I'll call this, and I'll put it on the red side again. I'll put it EAAA1, and then that's going to be my first AAA. And we could say, for example, in air defense that we would like to have some ZU-23 emplacements. So you can choose the insurgent one if this airbase has been captured by insurgents, or if you want like a real military thing, you can have this one. The difference is, look at their helmets. Those guys look like professional soldiers. If you take the insurgent ones, they've got like the toque and the beret, and so it looks like more like insurgent types. It's really not much of a difference. But that's like a AAA system that can be something that could ruin your day, right? So I'm going to put one at this end of the runway, and I'm going to add another one to the same group. There we go. And I'm going to put one, let's say, far end of the runway there. If you want to see the texture, you can hit the satellite map thing here, and then you can see your textures. I like to use the textures just to put it on, you know, a spot. There, it looks like there's a little road here. They probably would have put their AAA somewhere there next to the road. To me, that makes sense. And the other one we position, you see there's a little path there. Maybe we could put it in one of those like sort of sandy areas of the thing. Okay, so if I just leave them like this in the mission, you can see their threat circles in red. They pretty much cover the whole runway, and so they would be like an immediate danger when you get there. But let's say we want to create the element of surprise. I could just have them activate at a later time in the mission. Or I could turn off their AI and then activate their AI a little bit later if you want to actually see the object in game. But since it's not all that important for this tutorial, what I'll show you is just how to activate them after we've, let's say, done our first bomb run. Okay, so how would we do that? We're going to create like a zone, a trigger zone like this. So this is the symbol for it, the create trigger zone circle that's there. And right now I feel it's a little bit small, so maybe I'll add like, I don't know, like this. So this is like a 13-mile zone. Okay, maybe that was a bit too big. It's like a 6-mile zone. Okay, so this is like a 6-mile zone. Let's say when my plane enters that zone, we'll call it the target zone 1. When my plane enters that area, I want it to turn on a flag. Okay, so you'll see what that does. So I'm going to go here in my rules for trigger, set rules for trigger. And this is what like a lot of people find intimidating, but it really isn't that hard. And so I'm going to just put F1 in TGT area, something like that, so that this is just for you to know when you're looking at your list of triggers what they're doing. So it just tells me that the F1 is in the target area. And I like to put like F, let's say I put 1-1. F11 means that it's going to turn on flag 1-1. So part of group, I usually go with part of group and zone. I haven't put my vehicle yet, so I'll just leave this as the AAA. And then I will say flag on 1-1. So ideally, of course, my F1 would already be on the ground here at Jelenzik, and I would use it to activate the trigger that I just created. But right now I just want to show the concept. And so we don't have the right vehicle here. I'll have to think about it in just a moment. But what did that create? Well, it created like the fact that the only thing that's going to happen when my plane enters this, there will be a flag called 1-1 that will be active. Now let's say I want these two AAAs to activate, I don't know, let's say 2.5 minutes after I've entered that zone. Let's say they were sleeping in the building here and they had to run all the way to their guns. And so it takes them a little while to get there. 2.5 minutes wouldn't be like completely nuts. So I'll put, let's say, delay activate AAA 1. So I would say, for example, here in my condition, time since flag. So the flag is 1-1, and we said we wanted 1.5 minutes. Well, 2.5 minutes, I'm sorry. So 2 minutes would be 120 seconds, and we add 30 seconds to that, we would get a total of 150 seconds. And then we could say group activate the AAA. Here is, of course, it's one of the only objects in the mission, so that's the first one it chose, but we want that one to activate. And so that means that after the vehicle enters that zone, what's going to happen is that this AAA will appear and start shooting at anything that comes nearby. So if it takes me more than 2.5 minutes, I could get into that kind of trouble. Now I could say, for example, after, I don't know, maybe 3 minutes, there could be a SAM that will appear. So let's say we put one of the nasty ones. We're gonna put the where is the SA-19? There it is, the Tunguska. That's like the one everybody fears because it's got cannons, it's got missiles. Okay, so I could I don't know, put it somewhere just outside here. Facing that direction. And again, this one will be late activation. So right now it's called AAA2. It's fine with me. It is a AAA system, but it also has a SAM. But I put the late activation. And so I could just duplicate this by hitting the clone button. And then I'll say delay activate 2. And here we could just increase that number to, I don't know, maybe 220. After 220 seconds, we're going to activate this one. So if you stick around too long, you'll get shot at by regular AAA guns. If you stick a little bit longer, you'll have the SAM to worry about. So the idea would be, in your briefing, say, get in quick, drop your bombs, and get out quickly. That way you don't get engaged by those systems, right? And so that's really the idea behind this. So since we are making a video and you're probably going to want to see what it looks like, we're gonna put a plane here. Let's say right there. It's gonna be part of the Blue Force. It's going to be the Mirage F1. I kind of like the EE version because it does have a decent RWR. You have to set it to player or client. If you're making a single player mission, you can set it to player. I like to put all the planes I put in mission as a client. And you notice here that I put it like on the taxiway leading to the runway. Now most of the time if you put a plane on a parking spot, it's going to appear on those numbers on any airfield. And if you want to have a plane, let's say, appear cold and have to do your whole cold start, that's the way to go. You put them in the parking spots. Sometimes they have hangars on some airfields. You can put them in the hardened aircraft shelters. I kind of go the lazy way, and I like to be ready on the sort of side of the runway, ready for takeoff. So you see that here I chose the option, okay, you can take off from runway. That would put you on the runway ready to go, except in multiplayer where sometimes it'll choose the nearest parking. If you say take off from ramp, it would probably start you at one of those numbers like I said. Parking hot would be at a number but engines and systems running. If you say take off from ground, it'll be a cold start, let's say from that position where I am. But like I said, I like from ground hot, the plane's ready to go. And so when you choose those from ground options, you get that little circle here where you can choose where the plane is pointing. So normally if I was in this plane, I would have probably started in the parking lot. I would have taxied here, made my way there. So it would make sense that I'm sort of, oops, I'm gonna just remove that waypoint. It would make sense that I have the plane like, you know, the nose pointing on those yellow lines, so you can have fun with the adjustment. Here I'm pointed pretty much directly on it, and then it would mean that when I show up in the mission, I'll just have to make a left turn on the runway and be ready for takeoff and be on my way. So that's the first thing. You might have noticed that I had to remove a waypoint. Okay, I clicked by accident and it did this, and I went to delete there. It's because by default when you position a plane, it'll always be in that add thing, and when you're in that add thing, it adds waypoints. If I click like this, you see I'm putting a lot of waypoints. You can always delete those with the delete key there, but if you keep on clicking once you're done, you won't delete the plane. To delete the plane, you'd have to put your mouse over it and hit the delete key on your keyboard, and then it would disappear. But I don't want to do that now. What I'd like to do now is arm the plane and also choose the skin I'm going to use. So let's do that. We're going to click on the arming screen there. Now you see a Mirage F1. And I usually go for this map with, I think it's Côte d'Argent. Yes, this is the one with the tiger. You see there's a tiger on the fin, and it's got the little tiger thing. I kind of like this one on this map. And right now its number is 210 because we put 010 here. But I kind of like to go with number 32. That's my number. So I'm going to put this. Okay, it's 232. It's not 032, but it'll do for me. I know it's my plane when I see a 32. And because it's a Mirage F1 EE, I kind of like to use the letter, if I can, with my radio calls. So I'm going to leave it on Enfield. And I'll call it Enfield. Did I spell that right? No. Enfield 11, and then I'll copy that and put it here and just call it Enfield 11 pilot. So that's the unit, the pilot, whatever. In the game they often go with groups and units, so that's the name of my group, that's the name of my unit. Unit, it's more for ground units, but for planes they call it the pilot. So that's why I put the name pilot there. It used to be like that. Now everything comes with a bunch of numbers, and I kind of continue with the old school way. And what you see here, Enfield 11, is going to be your radio call. If you call the AWACS and say, hey, I'd like to get bogeyed up, you're going to hear the character in game say Enfield 11 calling whatever the name of the AWACS is, bogey dope. You can change the first number here. You can put, let's say I could make it 51 if I wanted to have this flight be 51, and then I would probably just change here to 51 and 51, and then I would be Enfield 51. If you put another plane in the flight, like with this option here, it would become 52 and then 53, 54, etc. Since we're going to be flying alone here, this is my plane. Now I have to arm the plane, so I'm just going to give it some magic missiles on the wingtips. I'm going to put some Durandal bombs. It's the BLU-107B concrete piercing bomb there on the center. Now that could be my loadout, but I'd like to have 6. So I'm going to put some on the inner pylons there as well. Now in my testing earlier, I found that if you select both bombs on fuselage and voilure, which is for the wing, they usually drop those first. So on a practice run, I went and dropped 4 of them, and I went like 1, 2, and then it did 3, 4. So I had like just those 2 left. It creates a bit of an imbalance. So keep that in mind. It's always a better idea to drop all 6 bombs in one pass. So that's my loadout. If I had wanted more fuel, I could have put some fuel tanks on the wings. I could have moved these bombs to the outer pylons. But this is a fairly short mission, so I don't need extra fuel. So that's going to be a good loadout for me. So we've got our plane, we've got our takeoff starting position here. And as I said, I want to fly over to this city and then cut through the mountains and go bomb the airfield. And we'll want to line up on this runway, which is 040. This is information you can include in your briefing that can be useful for targeting purposes, especially for a plane like the Mirage where you don't have the fancy waypoints that show up in your HUD. You might want to be able to have your compass pointing at 040 when you're getting near the airfield. Let's say you're flying in and you're heading, I don't know, straight for the waypoint, but you came in that way. If you arrive like this, it's going to be like you're going to have to make a right turn to align with your runway. It's going to be tougher to target. So it's better to think ahead and say, hey, I want to line up with the 040. And when you put your waypoints, you can think about that too. So what I was thinking to do is for my first waypoint, because the F1 sometimes had like one of those INS systems that would veer off point a little bit, I'm going to choose an object that's really easy to spot, where I can basically confirm that my first waypoint is really pointing in the right direction. You see that stadium there? So I guess that'll be pretty obvious when I fly over it. And so I guess that altitude here could be decent enough. Since we want to do like a surprise mission, maybe because this is like almost like sea level here, we could lower the altitude to 3,000. It doesn't matter all that much for the F1 because it's not going to display that in your HUD like the F-16, for example, which shows your waypoint at the altitude where it is. But still, it's interesting to know. So I'm putting my first waypoint there just so I can fly to that location and then confirm that I'm in the right spot. Then it's nice to have another waypoint to line up with the runway. So I'll put, let's say, my waypoint somewhere that would make me cut across here. If I put my altitude map here, I can see the curves on the ground. So yeah, this could be like a good area to go. So I'll put that. Look at that line. You see it goes between those two peaks, I think, there. So that should be a pretty good spot to have the waypoint. And again, I'll leave it at 3,000 because I think the highest peak near it is like maybe 1,000 feet, like 949. So at 3,000, this will be okay. And then we're going to head like nap of the earth to the airfield. And I'm going to position my waypoint here, like at the beginning of the runway. And one of the things I always like to do in every plane is put the altitude to 0 when it's a ground target. So you see that here it says 66 after I've clicked on my speed. That's because if you move the mouse around, you'll see that at the bottom here, it shows the altitude where your mouse is pointing. So the altitude on the runway is 66. If I move it here, you see it gets to 73 and then it changes a little bit as you move. But the runway itself is at 66. That's the altitude I have there. And that's where my INS system will bring me. Okay, so I'll have a nice path to my target. Now let's say I want to egress out of there using a different path than the one I came in. Maybe my egress would go in that direction, or maybe get me close to that river here so I could fly south following that river. Whatever you decide, it's your mission really. So I put my waypoint here. Again, you can leave it at 0, you can set it at an altitude. I set my other ones at 3,000. I'll put it at that altitude. And depending on how you've set the wind, I'll show you how to do that later on. Let's say you want to land with the wind or in the same direction as you took off, because let's say the wind is coming like southwest like this. You would probably want to put like a final waypoint just before your runway a few miles away. You can use the measuring tool by using the center mouse button on the wheel and measure a distance. Let's say I put it like 6-7 miles out to sea here. That's going to be my final. And I usually like to put the final at about 4,500, especially here it's over the water, so you know it's sea level. And then you can create your last waypoint as a land waypoint. You can just choose the option here like that and go landing, and you see it puts it like in the center of the runway. I call that the lazy way to put a landing. Sometimes I leave it though as a like flyover point, and I'll put the waypoint at the beginning of the runway. For some planes I kind of like doing that. In this case it doesn't really matter, so I'll just leave it as landing. It'll be on the center there. So now I've got a flight plan. I know that 1 is going to be over the stadium, 2 is going to be there, 3 is going to be there. Now I'm giving out those numbers as they are in the editor, but the Mirage, what it does is this position here, which is 0 in the editor, is going to be your position 1. So you have to think that when you're heading to this waypoint at the stadium, it's actually waypoint 2. In the plane, it's important. So we've got this. We go to the final, and then you land. Sometimes I give them names. I just go like this, and I go like, maybe that could be a rejoin waypoint if you're flying with friends. 2 could be my IP, so that I'm ready to line up with the runway. This could be my target, TGT. 4 could be my egress. 5 final. And 6 land. Again, this is just for the person doing the mission editing to know what those waypoints are for. If you have many aircraft, you could even name them. Let's say this is Enfield 51. I could put, you know, like E51 in front of my land so that I would know that this is the landing waypoint for this plane. Since we're going simple here with just 1, you can leave it like that. So right now I have a flight plan. It goes to my target. Now I said earlier that my trigger was set on the wrong thing, right? It was set for AAA number 1. I want to set it for my plane, which is Enfield 51. And so now when Enfield 51 will enter the target zone, which is that zone that I created here, the white area, it's going to turn on flag 11. After the delay that's here, you're going to have the AAA number 1, and after the longer delay, you'll have the AAA number 2. So the idea with that would be, okay, let's not stick around too long. But when you're coming in low level, you'll have like the effect of surprise. Sometimes I add more conditions, like let's say if I flew over this area really high, well then maybe their long range radars have spotted me. That creates another flag. That other flag would turn on the AAA. Again, I'm just showing simple things here. Another thing you can do if you want, like we said earlier, we had all those nice parking spots. We could put some, let's say, bombers or static vehicles. So I go with the little bridge symbol like this, and then I go, we're going to go combine, join forces red, planes, and then you can choose pretty much any plane you want. And then again, it depends what kind of target you're attacking, what country it's from. Here it's in Russia, so we could say, hey, they have a Tu-22, and this one only has like the one paint scheme, so that makes it pretty easy to choose. But let's say on the ramp over here, okay, I want to put some more planes. I could have like, oops, I don't want Croatia, I want the red. Let's say I want MiG-21. Since this is like a with the Mirage F1, you can put a plane that fits with its period. Now here it's funny because you can see the MiG-21 looks like it's, I think it's the Serbian skin there, but in here in that little window you see Afghanistan. Now I don't know, maybe you want to attack Russia instead, so you can choose among all those different skins. Let's say I want Romania and I kind of like their Lancer A1. Okay, well then you would have that kind of MiG-21. If you want Russia, well it's the VVS. So that VVS one, is that the one I want? Oh yeah, it's got like nice cool little things on the front there. Or maybe, no, that's too, I don't know. Okay, that's too bright. Great. Ah, okay, that looks Cold War to me. I like this one. And so you like this one, you want more than one, you can select it in here, like you see I'm moving it. And then if you hit Control C and then Control V, it's like a copy paste. You can put as many as you want on the ramp there. And so let's say you had time to do a strafe run, you could do that. You could go try to get those targets. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put like fuel trucks close to them and maybe some infantry. And so you'll see some fire if you hit some of those as well. This is what I call the decorations of a mission. But for now we've got a target, a flight plan. Now let's set our weather. Now we're taking off from Jelenzik, which is on runway 01. Let's say you want the wind ideally to come in your face for takeoff. Okay, well, you can set that in here. You see that at the pretty much default setting, it's going to be wind is 0. But let's say I want the wind to head in that direction. And of course, in this direction, it's 19. So let's say I put it on, I don't know, why does it say 19? It's not even close to 19. But anyways, I'll put it at 206. And I'm not going to put too much wind, but let's say I want like 4 knots of wind. You can see that at 1600 feet it's going to be 8 knots. So you have to keep that in mind. And then you could have, I don't know, 10 knots at that. And you have to also set your direction. It can be a different direction, but usually winds sort of follow roughly the same directions. And maybe at a higher altitude it goes up to 20 knots. So you can see that it's not exactly the same numbers, but it's roughly in the same direction. So we've got that set up. And here we're going to set up, let's say, some cloud conditions. So because we're going to be flying low, it could be cool to have a little bit of an overcast. And you can see that here they set their overcast at 8,000. I'd like it to be a little bit lower than that. So let's say it's close to 7,000 here. That's good for me. And I don't want it to be too early in the morning. I'd like it to be like mid-afternoon, like around 12:40, like that. If you want to know where the sun is located, you can bring that sun and moon thing with that little tool there. And then when you play with this, you can move it around, and you can see that if I put it like there, you can see the moon where it is too. So sometimes you set the date to have the moon in a certain spot if it's a night mission. But for now, as I said, I'll be happy with the sun in the high position. And of course, being very cloudy, there will be lots of shade on the ground, so it creates a certain atmosphere. You can set most of these things in here. That's quite interesting. I'm happy with that. So I've got my environment set. Do you want to add enemy aircraft on the flight? So do you want to just bomb the place, or do you want the place to be defended by enemy aircraft? Well, since I'm not like a super pro yet with the F1, maybe we could have, I don't know, like an aircraft that could appear at a later time, or maybe we could have some helicopters that take off, you know, a little bit after a delay, like we said, like for the AAA here. So we'll put a helicopter here. Okay, so the altitude here is 38. Let's put a helicopter like Mi-24 maybe, like the P version or the V. I don't know which one do I want. This is the one with the 30mm cannon, and so maybe I could put a Russian Air Force. Is that a Russian? Yes, it is. Yeah, those colors could fit with the environment where it's in, and then you can arm it the way you want. Maybe I could give it some, I don't know, gun pods or something like that. Oh, that's grenade launchers. That's not what I want. Let's see if I can put on the other one. Okay, so I'll put the big. This has two different size guns. So anyways, if he finds us, he could actually shoot at us with those big gun pods. And we can decide, do we want him to have tons of flares like this, or do we want to remove some of them? Do we want him to have an internal gun that's full, that's already been depleted? And you can see here it's got too much weight, so we want it to be able to take off. So maybe we could set 60% fuel. It's going to be 95% weight. This is all things that you can set up in here. But yes, it's at 1,640 feet. I could say like, okay, we're gonna pretend it took off there, headed there, and then it went there, started going up a little bit higher. So we could say, okay, I want it to fly at 3,640 feet, and then it'll just do like a round thing around the airfield, and then it'll come back here. One of the things I like to do, let's say I want it to go from waypoint 5 and then start again at waypoint 1 and do a big circle. You go in the options here and you say perform command, switch waypoint, and instead of going to 0, which was the starting point, you want it to go to 1. It'll then do like a little loop around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for as long as it has fuel, and then it probably would land back at the field. For that though, it needs to be late activation, and for it to appear in the mission, we have to choose when it's going to appear. So again, we could have a delay activate an MI-24. So I'm just going to copy this by hitting the clone key and change its name, MI-24. And then it could be time since flag 1-1. Who knows? Maybe this one shows up after 40 seconds. And then we would activate the rotary 1, which is the default name it gives to helicopters. If you want to be able to recognize it afterwards, you could say it's MI-24 number 1, and then you could give it a name there. And here it's veteran. I could decide that it's just trained, it's not like super good, and then you can even change the number. Let's say I want 17. We should be able to see 17 here. You can see it on the helicopter. So all these parameters are available in the editor. Of course, I probably wouldn't stick around too long to try to shoot down that helicopter, because as you know, there will be AAA and SAMs appearing, but some people, you know, they just want to kill everything. In this mission, they would realize that it's going to be difficult. This part here up top below MIS, it's the briefing. So usually you give it a name. So that's something we haven't done yet. We're still on our test caucuses. By the way, good idea to save often. You see how it sort of switches the screen when you do that, but always a good idea to save your work very often. And once you've decided what you're going to do, it's a good idea to give it a name with save as that will make sense for what you're doing. So let's say here I'm doing Mirage F1 Strike, and this is Krimsk, I believe. So, Krimsk, like that. Okay, So, and I could maybe just for myself, I could add AAA. Let's get AAA in it. So, mission title that makes sense to you. Sometimes I will put, like, for example, CAU like that in the name so that I know it's a map on the Caucasus map. Put the first 3 letters there. So we've got that. Got a name. And I click OK. It's going to save again. And now I have a name that makes sense, so I can use that same name for the sortie name here. Mirage F1 strike on Krimsk. And then here you could add information if you have other friendly flights. If you have an AWACS that you add, you could put it in there. If you have, for example, here we said the runway here is 04, so we could say strike Krimsk. I have difficulty with that one. Airbase runway 04 with Durandals. Okay, so it's a very simple briefing, but we could add to it like possibility of AAA. So you get the picture. And then in blue task, let's say you had like many members in your flight, you could give them each a task and give a lot of detail in here. And if you add, let's say I could add a TACAN to my airfield here, I could put the information for the TACAN in there. If you have other details that can be useful to know, you can add it in the situation. If you have mission specific details for this plane, it's probably better to put it there. And so all of these things, for example, here I could say, if I look at my waypoints, I have 1, 2, okay, so that's 3. So for my plane, it's going to be 4. Target is at waypoint 4. You have 6 Durandals. So again, I'm going very basic just to show you how it's done, but you can go as complex as how simple you want. If you use more advanced communications, usually it's a good idea to add the frequencies in your briefing so people will know what frequencies to use. I don't use that very often. I still use the easy comms most of the time. So there you have it. You have a functional mission. I'm just going to save it again. Like I said, it's important to save often. I just want to see if my stream is still going. It seems to be still going. So we'll go back to DCS and we'll try to fly it. Okay, so as I said, we're here. So what we want to do is turn left on the runway, take off, go to waypoint 1. We can confirm that the stadium is there. And at waypoint 2, well, it's going to be waypoint 3 really. We're going to be trying to line up with 040, which is the heading of the runway. You'll see me do that probably in the mission with my compass. And then here, I'm just going to drop the bombs on the runway. Simple enough, right? So let's go try it. And whenever you're going to click fly, when you test a mission like this in your editor, it's going to ask you to save the mission again. Whichever way you have zoomed in, zoomed out, okay, is going to be how it will be saved for your F10 view. So I kind of like to position the map in a way that makes sense to me like this, where I see my base and my target before I click the save thing. So yes, I will save my changes. And then I can go fly. You see, strike Krimsk Air Base, runway 04 with Durandals, possibility of AAA. could have written a longer briefing where I described the importance of having the element of surprise. And in here you can see I only have my plane, but sometimes I like to put an observer spot. That way, let's say you've got 4 planes and one of your flight members crashes or whatever happens, they can always come back as the observer to see what the others are doing, so it's less boring for them. So for now I'm just all by myself, so I'll just leave it like that. And then we're gonna go try and fly this. It's going to be first time I try this because I've done some tests bombing different airfields around here, but I haven't done this. Now, one of the first things that happens sometimes when I do a test is, let's say I click fly, I realize, oh, I forgot to take off that radar cover. I don't really like it. Now I know I could open up the canopy and remove it, but let's say by default I don't want it. I escape, I quit, and I go back to the mission editor, and then I go check all the options on my planes that I want or don't want by hitting, like you see here, we had the payload and the 3 little dots here at the end. You can say force radar cover state. I like to force it off so that we won't have it. And here you can set up your different bursts of chaff and flares, laser codes if you're going to put laser guided bombs on the plane that maybe somebody else is going to laze for you. All that can be set up here. But I wanted to do this just to show you that very often you forget something. Like let's say the labels, that's often one of the things I forget. The labels are in when I come in the mission. Sometimes I want them, but sometimes I don't, so I go back and then I can edit and say I don't want this option, or all the other options here. If you make a training mission to drop bombs, you could say unlimited weapons, so they regenerate themselves after you've dropped them. All of this is possible. But now we just wanted to get rid of the radar cover, so let's go with that. So now the mission's loading. I'm gonna click fly. And so here I want to set this up to instant and this up to single. And here you can see this is my INS system. Right now we're at waypoint 1, and if I set this here to, it's the outside wheel here that you click so that it points towards the end. You'll see that it says 000 because that's where we are. It's our starting position. But if I click 2 and then this little star, you'll see that it points in a different direction and it gives me a distance. I guess that would be like 12 miles. And that's going to be our first nav point that we're going to go to. So I like to set up most of those things on the ground when I can. Here I can see my lights are on, so I can turn it off and I can go in the outside view to confirm that lights are off. We want this to be a surprise mission, we said, so let's make sure our lights are off. If I move here in the cockpit, I can get my flaps down. This I always forget, so I might as well turn my master arm on, remove my cover for the landing gear, and usually that has set up things the way I want prior to takeoff. Now at one point during the flight I'm going to want to select bomb fuselage and bomb voilure because that's the bombs underneath the plane and that's the bombs on the wings, so that they become active. But because I have set my master arm on, if I do that on the ground and I accidentally hit the bomb release button, I could drop my bombs before the target. So I'll remove the joystick here. It allows me to see my fuel state a little bit better there. And we're gonna go fly this and see how it goes. So everything looks good outside. Let's put our joystick in the right mode and start taxiing. working. Make a left turn. All right, let's take off. Burners are on. One of the things I just thought about that sometimes I do prior to takeoff is set up my depression on the sight for the bombs, which would be about 150. But for the Durandals, since I'm just going to be flying over the airfield, I could just go by feel and it would probably work. In any case, we're going to make a left turn here and we're going to head for our first waypoint, which, if you remember, is that stadium. Put a easy to spot landmark for us to see. And you can see we have some terrain there too. So, oh, I guess my flaps were still down, so that speed, it's a good idea to bring them up. There we go. So let's do that anyways, the depression, just to have some sort of an indication when we get there. Always set it like at 152. We won't see it now because the bombs aren't active, but alright, so let's head low to the ground, at least behind the mountains. Keeps my element of surprise, like I said. If they don't see us on radar, they don't necessarily know we're coming. And we're going to go confirm that we have our stadium at our first waypoint. See, we're getting pretty close. 03. If I put the nose down right now, you can see the stadium is there. So let's try to fly right over it, see if it's going to tell us 0 when we get there. Zero, 1. Nice little stadium there. And 0 as we fly over. So we know that we've got good information. Now I have to go down here and switch it to 3. It's kind of hard to see. I think I just switched it to 1. Let's see, 3. There we go. And then this. It's a lot of time spent with your head down, which can ruin your effect of surprise sometimes. There we go. I like good challenging missions, so I've got a lot of terrain in this one, but if you want something that's a bit easier, you can put flatter terrain so you can turn on your autopilot when you're actually changing your nav information here. Or you can fly higher if there's no SAM threat. This is another thing I could have done in the mission editor, is put, let's say, an SA2 site at a certain distance, where if you're flying low in the mountains it won't be able to shoot at you, but if you get up at 10,000 feet it's gonna make your day a little bit more miserable. So we're 5 miles from our IP point. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to activate my bombs so that this is ready. And we should see, you can see here the pipper appeared when I activated the bombs. You can verify that your master arm is on, yes. And then we're at 3 miles. Get a little bit lower. Okay, so we're passing the waypoint now, so let's switch to the next one. Here we go, and you see the arrow is almost pointing straight ahead because the flight plan helped us line up with the runway. If we look in the distance, we'll probably be able to see the runway soon. Yeah, I see indications of it. Ah, it's right there to the right. So I'm gonna again try to line up with it, and you can use your compass for that too, but there we go. Good old Mark 1 eyeball. Yeah, maybe I'll check in my briefing and change the information that on the compass runway heading will read as 030. Okay, so now we're getting to the target area. I'm gonna get low and fast. Let's start the afterburners. Bombs away, bombs away, bombs away, bombs away. Let's center it more. Bombs away, bombs away. Let's see what that looks like. Boom, boom. Okay, we've ruined this airfield for the foreseeable future, so let's switch waypoints. Waypoint 5, click. As you can see, because we did one pass, we were able to not have any AAA engage us. Okay, I made things a bit easy, but that's the idea there. Now, since we're in testing mode, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove this. Just make sure that all my weapons are off. Yes. I'm going to turn on my cannon, see if it works. Yes, it does. And then we're going to set this waypoint to steer point 4 again. And now we're going to go again when the AAA will probably have reactivated. When I build missions, I like to test what would happen if I do something stupid. So I'm going to climb a little bit higher. I'd like to go shoot those MiG-21s. There they are. Shoot the middle one here. I missed, but the point was just to see if the AAA would be here. Check our fuel state. Fuel state is good. Is there some AAA? Yes, there is AAA shooting at me now, you see? So they weren't shooting before because they weren't active, but now, yeah, they're shooting at me all right. They got a few hits. And if I stick around a little bit longer, probably there will be like a 2S6 on the other side shooting at me. Yeah, it's shooting missiles now.
Great.
I'm gonna get away from that. Okay, so my enemy air defenses work. I'm not gonna stick around too much to see if they can actually shoot me down, because I've already gotten a few hits, so I'm hoping to survive. I don't know if you saw those little puff of smoke behind. Yeah, a few things blew up behind me. Alright, let's go switch back to our egress point. Let me just get things under control here first. There we go. And I'm gonna go to... Actually, I'll set it to 6 right away. We're out of the danger zone, so that's waypoint 6. Good. So if you remember, waypoint 6, I believe, was my over the sea final waypoint. So if I follow the compass here, it should bring me to that. It's 20 miles. Would make sense. So again, the gods of DCS were on my side for this flight, because the 2S6, I figured if I flew near it, I would just be dead, and I managed to see the missile, drop some countermeasure, evade the missile, and then exit the area. Probably a little bit of luck involved. I won't lie about that. So as you can see here in the window, this is my runway, but I'm heading out to sea, and around the sea area is where my final waypoint is, which helps us to line up with the runway. What I'll do though is I'm going to move a little bit to the right of it. There we go. I might check also for the Jelenzik runway, because there's probably going to be like a 10-degree difference compared to what it said, since the difference for the target runway was about 10 degrees. It will probably be a 10-degree difference for my landing waypoint. Let me just switch to the 7. There we go. So now we've slowed down considerably. Gonna get the air brakes back in. There's my runway. The controls are a bit erratic, so I don't know if that AAA shot that went plunk plunk, if it damaged my control surfaces. So let's bring down some flaps, air brakes. Bring the gear down. Full flaps, and turn this little thing on. I'm gonna turn this off. Oops. You see the controls are a little bit affected by whatever hit me. Gonna have to realign on the runway. Touchdown. Let's get the parachute out. Get some wheel brakes going. All right, we made it back. Now, one of the things I didn't do for this mission, but sometimes I like to do, is I like to put like ground vehicles, like you can see, or those big fuel trucks next to the tower there, but maybe we could go park close to that. But sometimes I put like some vehicles on the ground just to put a little bit of atmosphere. And my friends and I, we've got like our own vehicles that we like to put, so we recognize where each of our parking spots are, so that you can finish your mission, go park your plane, and then enjoy a beverage next to the planes, whatever it is. It's those nice little things you put on the ground sometimes create a bit of atmosphere, make it look like the airfield is a bit more alive. So those are also things that you can do when you're playing with the mission editor. And basically, yes, you can use like scenarios that are very realistic militarily, but also your imagination can help you make like interesting flights. Like for this one, like I said, I only went with blue versus red, so I didn't have to stick to whatever country would realistically be in the area here. I could have decided that I wanted to do a dogfight against some F-16s, even though it's from a different period and it's not something you would find in Russia. I can put that in when I put blue versus red, right? And so the mission editor allows you to do all kinds of creative things. You can have fun with that. So now we'll go, like I said, park our plane next to those big fuel trucks there and pretend that there's a ground crew waiting for us with everything they need to check our planes, see if there's any damage. To my control surfaces following that AAA hit that I got. Maybe it's just that it was windy when I came into. You probably felt it, that the wind that I put in the editor made the thing shake. You can also set turbulence. That really will affect your landing when you're coming in. And then of course, if you put like a wind that's coming sideways to your runway, it makes it even harder. So all of those are things that can be fun to play around with the editor. The more you do it, the better you'll get at it. The more you'll understand what the different functions are. There are lots of manuals out there that you can read. And all of this that we did here was without any scripting, that complicated stuff that people do. If I see I get a lot of likes for this stream, maybe I'll put examples of how you can use some Lua files to make your mission more interesting. Let's say to have a ground unit designate your targets for you, and you come in, especially like with this plane, the Mirage, it doesn't have its own designator, but you can carry a few laser guided bombs. You bring them to a target that's been lased for you and you drop them on target. But for now, our pilot is safely back. Trying to see if I can spot holes in the plane. It doesn't look like I have anything very visible in terms of damage, so I guess I did okay. So I hope you enjoyed this little mission editing plus mission all in one together. And that'll be it for that.